Welcome, one and all, to the Success Curious podcast. It's your boy Andy here, and I am absolutely privileged, I will say, to have someone that I have revered and respected for a heck of a long time, and only relatively recently started to become a bit more connected to, and having a few more chats with. But the perception and the respect of the man certainly is fully deserved. Ewan Morton is joining me from up in Sydney, New South Wales. He is the managing director of Morton Real Estate, and has been since December 1996. So I think that he started when he was about 10, but he's been rocking and rolling in the real estate industry, a very cutthroat industry, but he's been doing it in a way that is so undoubtedly who he is, that it is absolutely undeniable that what you see is absolutely what you get. And this is becoming a rare thing these days, gang, which is why I've asked people like Ewan to jump onto the podcast, because there's been a growing amount of people that have said to us that, to find someone that is who they are online is becoming increasingly rare. So that's why I'm bringing in some heavy hitters like this gentleman right here. Ewan, it's an absolute pleasure to have you on the show. How are you today, sir?
Yeah, very well. Thank you. Thank you very much for having me. That was a very nice intro.
It's an absolute pleasure to have you on board, man. And really, because a lot of people that listen to the show are sort of either early 30s or late 20s. We're sort of talking millennials, Gen Zs, and younger people, right? But as well as that, parents that are sort of going through that phase that everybody goes through, where they're sort of doubting whether this is their lot and is this actually what life was supposed to be like, and all that sort of stuff. You've been through a number of life barriers and hurdles and so on and so forth, man. And one of the great things that I really, really respect and love about what you do is that you're very open about the whole thing. To put it into a bit of context, team, for you listeners, Ewan's been very vocal in a well-being program that is throughout the industry called Rise, and has been a very, very vocal human in the space of real estate when it comes to the care factor, not only of customers, but also for the people within the space as well. And so I think that's probably why I had a natural sort of gravitation or pull towards this gentleman. And Ewan, for the people that don't know who you are, that might not be in the real estate space, to be frank, and give us a bit of an MO, give us a bit of an elevator spiel on the journey to date.
So I suppose the first thing is I'm very tall. So that's why
I don't have to look up to too many people.
That's generally the first thing everybody notices. And I suppose the second thing is I'm in my 50s and I've got a full head of hair, so I'm very proud of that. So Morton Real Estate, it's been going for 30 years next year. I started it when I was 28 and I'm now 57, so a long time. We have 9 offices across Sydney. We're not a franchise business, so we have a few challenges. Being in that structure, in that leadership and culture and stuff is very important to us. I mean, it's important to everybody, but I spend a lot of time on those two things. We manage 3,800 properties across Sydney, and we have a sales team of 30-ish. And we sell, 500 transactions a year, I suppose. Across all of that. So a lot of moving parts. Total team is about, we also have a building management business as well. So it's about 100 and something across all of that. And we have an onshore, obviously people in Australia, but we also got an offshore team as well.
Yeah.
So we're really getting into that more than we have been in the past. So obviously that requires a certain style of leadership as well. In terms of it, ups and downs through lots of things, business still standing. Sometimes you just got to be happy with that. So I certainly do feel that a lot of the things I do with these sort of podcast type of stuff, the reason I do it is partly because I am an operator. So it's not like I've done something, sold it, and then written a book and gone on a tour, which is a very attractive thing to to sort of think about. It's more that I am day to day, working to make the whole thing work. So, very much hands on. And I suppose, as you said in the intro, uh, from a real estate point of view, I'm very interested in the well-being of the people and also the well-being of the people who run real estate businesses, because our environment, there are challenges. I mean, you would know, Andy, but maybe some of the viewers, it's a very emotional environment. We have emotional people doing a very emotional job, moving people in and out of homes, whether it's renting or selling. So the whole lot is at times a tinderbox of emotion, and there's lots of very challenging people situations that we have to deal with.
Yeah, for sure. And then we're going to dig into a whole bunch of that over the course of our conversation today. Uh, Dealing with the volume of different personalities that you've dealt with over the trip, and yes, 8 billion people, everyone's wired differently, but in terms of that emotional environment, you would have seen the extremes of different personalities at various stages, right? The first thing I want to ask before we get into the meat and veg of the episode is, how do you regulate yourself when you've got so many different emotional energies kicking around you at one time?
That's a very good question to get started with. So I feel like I've had to train myself. So I think to be a leader of anything, you have to have a degree of get up and go and push and shove and energy and emotion. And definitely you have to learn. I've had to learn how to manage that. And you need to learn how to turn it on and off as you need it. And it's not always easy to do. Like when I turned 50, I decided I wasn't going to get angry at anything. Right. Because I decided, like, what was the point? You're generally angry about something that's already happened. And because you don't have the power to turn back time, why get upset about it? Right. So now it's one thing saying that, it's nothing actually doing it.
True.
But I do run on that premise. Like, I've got a situation going on today, which is going to be messy. But my first step is like, let's just everybody take a step back and calm down. It doesn't have to be dealt with today. It does not have to be a rush to create drama. Sometimes letting everybody settle down and sit in their own shit for a while is not a bad strategy for everyone to have some reflection. So I suppose the thing is learning how to regulate my own emotion. Sometimes I've got to take my own time out. Like right now, there's a lot going on. I haven't had a break for a while. I'm a bit tired. I am serving it up to people.
Yep.
That's not always a bad thing either. So, I find from my own leadership style, I can, we had a function last night and we've had some training things happen and people have not been RSVPing to say whether they're coming or not coming. So I just crapped it. And I was like, if you're not coming, you're not coming, but you've got to have the courtesy and the respect to RSVP no. Otherwise, you've got some poor person at the other end who's spending money on your behalf and putting time into you that you're not even acknowledging, and that's not acceptable.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not like that all the time. Like, I'm far more flexible, and I'm definitely very much, everyone's got a different story, different things going on, whatever. I'm very amenable to that. But every now and again, I've got to draw a line in the sand, and that is, and the business has reacted to that. Beautiful emails written about RSVPing why they can't come, but it's just, it's reminding everybody of those sort of boundaries. And so I find what happens is that I am pretty full on, and I think most of my team would know that I'm there 100% for them. So that gives me the right to be able to address things from time to time, and I only really do it when I've got to the end of my tether, and that generally has a power in itself. So if you're somebody who yells and carries on all the time, people actually stop listening to that. So every now and again, when you do have to put your foot down, you're doing it, they know you're serious about it, and people listen. So that's part of it. I've got to take myself out sometimes, sometimes I need to go sit quietly in a cupboard, and I've got to process my own emotions around things. But I definitely think you can train yourself, that whole thing that, you can make a choice. You make a choice to react to something. So whatever has happened, you're choosing to react. And I think over time, the more you do it, the better you get at it. And, there's also an element you actually are able to show that, but you may not necessarily be feeling that.
Yeah.
Move to a stage where actually you are feeling that as well. And that takes practice. So that's one of my sort of mantras is to not get angry, slow things down, stay calm. Like if something's very stressful, I might actually go and walk around the block. Because I know that if I do something in the moment, if I react to my own emotion in the moment, then potentially I'm going to make the situation worse. So there's all of that. So you got to have a good insight into yourself, I think. And I do a lot of exercise and I swim and do things. And the reason I do that is because I have to have an outlet for that energy. So it's like you can absorb all of that energy, but you have to have some way of getting it out.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, I don't think it's healthy for you. And particularly as leaders of businesses, sometimes I don't think that until you've had your own business, you don't understand.
Yeah.
It's having children, right? So when you have children, people talk to you till they're blue in the face. They give you all this advice and books and tell you to do this and that. And you know what? You're going, yeah, yeah, yeah. And it seems like, yeah, yeah, yeah. And then the baby's handed to you and suddenly you go, oh my God, no, I understand. Right? Emotion that goes with it. I think running your own business is like that, where you start it for all sorts of great, noble reasons, right? Where you're going to help people and, you're going to get out there and make a difference. And the reality is very, very different to that. So,
Right. What you're going on with there is there's so many layers to that first response. And we're going to take this down a couple of different paths already, which is awesome. Before Adrian cracks it at me though, and I bury our textbook question in amongst all of this gold. I need to ask you before we go any further, what your definition of a successful human is, because I've got this belief that it is a combination of success, connection, influence, and happiness. They all live in an ecosystem where one can't survive without the other. What's your definition? And I'll actually add a little bit more onto it and say how has it changed over time?
So I think like at the moment, I'm actually, I'm in this zone where I think I can do more.
Okay.
How you think I'm 30 years down the track? Surely I'm prepared to give up now. Isn't it time to stop? And I'm like, no, it's not. So have I achieved what I thought success is? Yes and no, as in what I think I'm capable of. I feel like I can give more. So if someone was to take the business away from me right now and say, okay, you're finished, I could tick a few boxes, right? Assuming someone pays me for it. That's not always a given. But sure, then I would be financially secure and it'll be good, right? But that's not what I'm about. I don't really care about the money. I'm not a materialistic person in the sense, like I like to have a nice house and I like to travel and do things. I like the freedom to be able to, buy stuff when I want it, and not worry. But I'm actually not a materialistic person. I'm more about the intellectual journey of making something work. So probably sometimes I think I make the business far too complicated. Like I can do a great job of complicating it, and my team can too. Like it's like, geez, like we all love a good puzzle, right? A good problem. By the time we've solved it, we've created a massive sort of mess. So we're excellent at doing that. But that's my sort of motivation. Really, is that the intellectual side of it, the mental challenge of putting the puzzle together, but also it's also about the people. Like my fundamental thing is, at the end of the day, my fundamental thing is I don't think there's any God. Like, so I'm sorry to any listeners out there who've got a belief and they're going to be looking at me going, well, I'm in trouble. But I don't think I don't think that exists. And so therefore, at the end of it all, you're deady bones. That's it. So you're gonna be dead. So what's going to happen after that? Nothing. So between now and deady bones, I sort of think, well, what am I going to do? And it's all about the contribution you make to other people. So, I've used this line with some of my I worked with some of my salespeople once. I said to them, like, you're really in the danger of being the only person at your own funeral, right? Because you're such a fuckwit. And so if you think about it, right, who's going to turn up? Is anyone going to turn up? Right. And I think if a bunch of people turn up at the end, and say, that's all guy, like he was all right. I think that's probably as good as you get. So my whole sort of thing is you get that because you make a difference to other people. In some way you influence their life. So that's what Morton's about, is trying to help people achieve the goals that they want. And hopefully by them doing that, the business also succeeds as well, and I achieve my goals. That is the theory. It doesn't always go. It's not as smooth as that. That's a noble purpose, but the reality of humanity and human beings is that's a messy, messy journey for everybody. But I do believe in that. I think at the end of the day, the best that you can do is contribute to another person and make a difference to them, right? And sometimes you got to remember, sometimes it's small things that I think about my career, and I think about people who helped me when I was getting going, and where I was thinking, God, I'm never going to make it. And people who said one small thing or gave some piece of generosity, which they probably didn't even realize the effect that they were having, because by them telling me whatever they did, it gave me hope that I could succeed myself. And so I think it's really important that people do that. And that's one of the reasons, like being on this podcast, if there's anybody out there, which is something I say helps them to keep going, then that's a good thing. So in terms of the definition of success, I think that's what it's about. And the material stuff, as long as you're comfortable enough for you, like, as long as you don't have to have all the trappings of the cars and I mean, real estate's a classic. We buy the right. It's like, focuses on the wrong thing. But and there's nothing wrong with that. Like, there's nothing wrong with that. Like, if you want to drive a Mercedes and that's what you've always really wanted, and that's what the goal you set yourself, and you achieve it and you get the Mercedes, then good for you. Like, there's absolutely nothing wrong with having the goal and setting out to achieve it. But I personally get more satisfaction from when the whole thing hums. Like, we had a function last night, like we're a mid-year sort of social, and like, it's been a bit of a hard week on some levels. We've got all sorts of different moving complexities going on. So, but I went there, and I actually went home and sat down. When I got home, had a nice cup of tea just by myself in the dark. And just thinking, what, we're making a difference. People worked for us, went away, came back. The feedback I got about how people thought about our culture, people there making an effort, right, to connect with others and contribute to our Morton community. I was like, what, that's pretty good. And that inspires me to keep going, that people did that. So yeah, dude. So it's a funny thing, I have this sort of restless. Do I think we've achieved everything that we could? No. Have I ticked boxes and bought a house and educated children and done all that? Ticky tick tick. Yep. So and I set out to do all of that. So that's been all good. But yeah, so I would sort of say I have a sort of a restless discontent to always wanting to be moving towards doing something and being better. And I haven't at any time reached a point where I felt that needed to stop.
Yeah. Now, has that ever become toxic at any stage?
Yeah. Definitely. Well, I think if you're going to be successful at anything, you've got to have some sort of, I don't know, determined push
Mm.
to drive it. And I think you have to have that because you've got to be able to overcome the obstacles that are going to stop you from succeeding.
Mm.
Like, it's just not, it's not easy, right? Nothing's easy. If it was easy, everybody would do it, you know? And I suppose selling real estate's a hard gig. Like, a lot of people are attracted to selling real estate because of the money. But oh my God, if that's what you are solely about, you're going to find it really difficult because it takes a long time to get to being one of the ones that get the money. So, you know, so yeah, so I sort of, as long as I think, yeah, you can't let it get out of control. You've got to keep a balance. It's like everything. You do have to have a balance. So even though I've said all of that, you know, you also need to take a time out to just take a bit of a chill pill sometimes. Go, you know what? It's actually okay. You know, I say to my guys, you know, something's going on. You know what? We're all alive.
Yeah.
Huh? You know what? That's pretty good. You know, why don't we make ourselves a cup of tea and just give thanks for that? You know, so you've got
Like the world gets solved with a cup of tea, man. It really, really does.
It really does. You know, but I think and then you go, you know what? Now let's just pull ourselves together and let's get back out there and try again. And you got to keep it light. So you can't have it where you're driving like that. That's my goal. That's not everybody's goal. Just because I'm like that doesn't mean everybody in Morton is like that. And it's not fair for me to think that they should be. You know, everybody wants to achieve success that's different to them. You know, people have different needs. They want to do different stuff. That's part of the challenge is you've got to try and pull their goals into your goals so that everybody's achieving together. But, you know, people want different lives and want to do different things. And it's not up to me to tell them what to do. Everyone has to find their own way. So you've got to be a little bit careful with that because I think, you know, everyone loves a good goal. They love a good vision. They love somebody going somewhere. But if you drive everybody into the ground with that, then yes, it can turn out to be toxic and damaging. It can destroy stuff.
Yeah, fair. No, absolutely. Now, one thing that I'm guessing all the listeners, you lot are going to be hearing, and you're going to be, and you're starting to understand the DNA, the sort of the way that this gentleman is made up, and he's not one to shy away from a situation or a perception or whatever the case may be. Ewan, I want to ask because you've talked about things like material possessions and so on and so forth, and there is that one of the huge challenges for anybody when it comes to even just the notion that success could even be a part of their life in any way, shape, or form, is a real struggle with what defines or what contributes towards one's identity, right? And there's there is obviously in the materialistic world that we live in, the level of attachment to material when it comes to how that identifies as me, right? It's very challenging for a heck of a lot of people, right? When you're looking at the landscape, you're looking across the landscape there's different egos, different levels of ego and all the rest of it, right? If you were to put a bit of a bullshit radar on and a bullshit meter when it comes to the notion of success, what are the things that you see that don't make you angry because you don't get angry anymore? What are the things? What are the things that you see that really make you go, "That's just absolute nonsense"?
I mean, what like I've always had this thing in the real estate industry that I just say things how they really are for me. And one of the things that I have found by doing that is that everybody else is like me. They just didn't want to say it. So and then when you do say it, it opens up a much better conversation. So I think there's a lot of people who put a lot of image on stuff and wanting to make things look a certain way. And I'm sure some of it is correct, right? You know, there are real estate agents driving around in Rolls Royces. That's because they have the money to buy the Rolls Royce, you know, like, yeah, that's fine. But I think that people who are focused on that as the goal are missing the point. and potentially won't get to the Rolls Royce. I think that you've got to focus on the excellence of the journey, or the joy of being excellent.
The joy
whatever,
of being excellent. What a fuck.
yeah, and I think I think there's two things. If you got to like to work hard. So I think if you're not somebody who likes working, maybe you're smarter and can maybe you're smarter and you can do something clever, right? Whatever. But everyone I've observed that's been successful, and I take my own journey, if you're not willing to work harder, I think it's difficult.
Yeah.
So you got to be able to you've got to be able to do the work to get there. And of course, people put an image on because they're too embarrassed for it to be not what they want you to think, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like it's like one of the discussions I love having with real estate principals is profit. What profit do you make? And I tell you the answer, you always got to do it at the end of the night when everyone's drunk.
Yeah.
Right? When they've got their guard down, and their response is always the same. It's like, oh, and they'll tell you a figure, a percentage, right? And then it turns out that's what they want.
Yeah.
Not necessarily what they've got. Now, and sometimes you do, and that's when I find you can get the real answers to things, because you find people have got the same problems that I've got, and what are they doing to solve it? What am I doing to solve it? Then you can get a better outcome. So I definitely think, it's human nature to not want to look like a loser.
Yeah.
Now, who wants to do that?
No,
right? And I reckon I'm the same.
Everybody's the same to a degree.
Yeah, like, you don't want anyone. Like, I love it when, how's it going at Morton Real Estate? My general answer is, yeah, pretty good. because you know what? There's some really great things going on, and there's a bunch of shit things going on, right? When you're trying to grow a business and move it forward, you're not getting it all right all the time. So, everyone, when you're having a surface conversation and you're rounding it up, I call it, like, yeah, no, it's really good. Or depending on who I'm talking to, oh, it's really, really great.
Yeah.
Yeah, really great. Because I'm trying to undermine them. But I've always found like, I once did a talk years ago. This is what sort of started it. Years ago, I made a speech at a conference thing, and basically, no one knew of me. I hadn't done anything. I didn't feel like I'd done anything, but they asked me to give this talk, and I gave this talk about basically how shit I was. Okay. And I did it in a funny way.
Right.
It was sort of humorous, and I just these things. Everyone says things like, I did this and I was so successful in the first 6 months. And I put up this blank piece of paper, and I put the first 5 years, and I wrote intentionally left blank. And they were like, "What's that about?" I said, "Because nothing happened." Disaster. And everyone was like, and of course, a lot happened. Like, I learned a lot, but I hadn't actually achieved anything really. But the fact that I'd got through those 5 years was success itself. Like, in that particular one, like, I remember thinking, those small business statistics that say that most businesses after 5 years basically are out of business, like 80% or whatever have failed, or 90% have failed.
Yeah.
And I knew all those statistics when I went into it. And after 5 years, not about my 5-year anniversary, and I understand that statistic now.
Right.
Like, I believe it. I can see how do. So, you know what? I hadn't actually made any money or done anything, but I was still standing. So that for me was success. But I had to redefine that in my own mind, because I'd got caught up on what everybody else was doing. So I had a peer group. I felt like I had a peer group that was pushing forward materially much, much stronger than me. They'd all chosen corporate careers and things like that. So they were all doing these amazing, interesting, big things. And I'm scrabbling around in the gutter of real estate, just trying to get through it.
Yeah.
So, they were there. So that was the pressure where I was like, oh my God, like I'm losing here. But I think part of the thing, coming back to what is the definition of success, is you got to be clear about what it is that you want to do, right? But what's important to you, and why. And I always wanted to have my own business, and I always wanted to have a crack at that. It just turned out to be much, much harder than I thought. Much, much harder. And I think everybody thinks that. You think you it's not that it's going to be easy, but you hope it's going to be not super difficult. And it turns out to be super difficult. And generally that super difficult puts you personally under intense pressure.
Mm.
And I think when I say, the small businesses fail, maybe some of them succeed because people say, I'm going to stop doing this.
Mm.
But I had a moment where I was like, a very conscious moment where I was like, I'm sitting there just quietly. I was there standing on a street actually going, this is fucked. It is utterly, completely fucked, right? And then the next question is, well, whose fault is that?
Mm.
And I'm like, well, there's one common element in all of this, shit show, and that's me. Right? So obviously I'm the problem. And then it's like, okay, rightio, well, now that we've dealt with that, are we going to give up or not give up? And I just remember thinking failure just wasn't an option for me. I just, well, look, probably a lot of screwed up reasons, but I remember thinking this, I can't. Oh no, it was kind of like I had my mum and dad in the business as well. I'd started it with my dad, and like I if that business was going to fail, what was going to happen to them? That it wasn't that. And also I just thought, well, I remember I thought, you know what, I've made a decision, for better or for worse, to be a real estate principal. And I appreciate that not everybody would make that choice. In fact, very few people. But I had decided to do that, right? And it was quite a pivotal moment, really, because I thought, well, I can't get any worse.
Mm.
I also at that time I thought, well, I'm obviously a person that is not going to earn a lot of money. And I have to get used to that. And if that is going to be my lot in life, I still had to have a happy life.
Mm.
And my wife and I have often reflect back on that. Like when we got started, when we sort of got married or got together, we had nothing. Like, there wasn't, I mean, I had the business, so I had that.
Mm.
But, like a lot of people getting started, you didn't have much. And I thought, well, you gotta know how to, my mother-in-law actually has a very good piece of advice, which is you've got to learn how to be happy with nothing. And I think for people going into business, or if you're trying to achieve a big goal, it's good to anchor yourself on that. Everything that you do from there is up. So even now, I'll say my wife, or we'll talk about things, and we live in a house that we didn't expect to live in, right? And we've renovated that house, and we didn't expect to do that, and we love living there. And our 3 kids, we've got 3 kids, and we've educated those, and we've done the goals that we set for all of that, and we never really expected that we'd get that far. And so that makes success a lot on one level, despite everything I just said before. Yeah, it's the contradiction of all of this. You got to go, it's not bad. Like, so things are a bit grim. Okay. The dividend wasn't as big as I wanted it to be. Well, it's done a lot better than what we expected over the time. So keeping that in perspective, but I remember really definitely having this moment. I thought, well, if I've chosen to be a real estate principal, and it's like cutting the anchor, where you sort of think, I just have to cut the anchor, and I have to sail, and I just have to trust in that. And that's where I sort of thought, well, I've just got to be the best real estate principal I can be.
Yeah.
And I need to concentrate on being an expert at my craft, and I need to learn. So I'd been in business for 5 years, 6 years before I even went to a conference, right? I was only then that I realized the benefit of a franchise. It never occurred to me that could be something that could help me. So there's a bit of like, I don't know what I was thinking. So I remember going to a conference and it was a big deal. And at the time, like, you know, in terms of spending the money to go and everything. And I got there and I rang my dad and I was like, 10 o'clock at the break, you know, we'd only done an hour and a half. And I'm like, oh my God, Dad, we are just so completely shit. It's not funny. And I said, all this original thought that we think we're having, people had those 20 years ago. Like we are so far behind, you know, reinventing the wheel. But it actually really inspired me. And I went on and from then I went out and I went to heaps of conferences and I started learning things and I read stuff and I went on study tours. Like when my second daughter was born, you know, we had her and my mother-in-law came down and I went on a study tour, right? And then mother-in-law went and I went home and with things, but I was like committed to what I was wanting to learn, you know, in terms of getting it done. So, and from that, I met people. So I met people and successful people are happy to share their stuff because they know what the journey's like.
Yep.
So anything that they can do to help you. So I'd say, oh, look, I'm thinking of doing this. And, oh, you know, we tried that. If you're going to do that, do this instead because we made that mistake.
Yeah.
So what I always found was by telling the truth or by saying, look, well, this is not working for me. You know, what happened? And then they tell you their bit. And not only that, they then embrace you and you learn a lot faster by learning from their experience. And someone was telling me, someone said, why do you go and tell everyone everything that we're doing? And I was like, well, because I get more back.
Yeah.
In terms of what I get back from that. So, you know, so that was a pivotal, I think, in terms of the success journey. So you even coming back to your question, success has changed as things have gone on. And I do think that, you know, you reach, I think a lot of motivation in the beginning comes from fear, like that fear of failure, you know, fear.
Mm-hmm.
Can I pay the bills? How am I going to move forward? It's fear driven. And my uncle actually helped me with this because he took over a family farm at 17, right? And he just said, like, he just was fear the whole way. And he said, once you get past that stage, then it becomes fun. And I went, and I think that's it, you know, part of achieving the goals, like everyone has financial and materialistic goals, you know, like shelter, you know, that's a good goal to have, you know, all that. But once you get past all of those, you've done it. And I've suddenly gone, that is, okay, well, I can actually let go of some fear here. And now we can really have some fun. And, you know, I'm more confident in investing in things and experimenting and doing stuff because you sort of know a process to go around it. But I think for everyone I've talked to or anything I've seen, certainly my experience, is you've got to have this moment where you're either going to give up or you're not.
Yeah.
And giving up can be success in itself. Like, you know, I've had friends that have businesses that decided to stop and it was the right decision, right? It was the right decision. And that's hard decisions to make, but it was the right thing. But for me, I was like, nah, I just have to work it out. So I've just got to think harder or try harder or do something and keep it going. And here we are this 30 years later and we are what we are. And we never really expected it to be like it is.
Yeah. Before I let you go, I want to dig on, I've written a whole stack of notes here. There's one bit that I want to dig on. Which is what you said, which I think's got to be a bumper sticker. Which is the joy of being excellent.
Yes.
The joy of being excellent. Now, for a lot of people, and for a lot of these conversations that I've had over the trip, right? A lot of it is boiled down to feelings, emotions, motivations, you know, greater good, all that sort of jazz, right? But something as tangible as and visceral as the joy of being, I've not had anyone connect excellence to joy. I want you to dig into that a little bit because realistically, competence breeds confidence, right? In whatever it is that we want to do, right? And there's got to be a knowledge base in order for you to be able to get anywhere or do anything of some description. But describe for me, like, explain to me how you attach excellence to joy.
So I think the thing is, whatever we're spending time on doing at work, you might as well do the best you can. Like I have this thing that if you get out of bed in the morning and you're breathing, well, you might as well try your best because there's nothing to lose, nothing, right? The worst case scenario is you might learn something. So it doesn't matter what you're doing, what role you're doing. There is always a standard where it can be improved.
Yep.
Like even if you're the receptionist somewhere, well, there's lots of areas of excellence there, like the tone you use when you answer the phone, how you manage your time, how do you wear the right headset, like all the how do you type at the same time, like how do you be friendly, and like there's all sorts of things that you can do to take it to another level. And I think if you're on the pursuit of excellence, it makes you curious about how to do things better or differently. So, like in real estate, you have people who work with buyers, right? And, you say, hello, do you want to buy the house? No. Hello, do you want to buy the house? No, right? And then it's like, well, how can you ask that question differently? What energy can you put into it? How can you connect with those people so they want to buy through you? Like, there's a whole range of things, and you don't have to go very far to find dialogue and people and experts and stuff that you can watch and videos and ideas. And I think that if you lean into that, then you'll just get better at how you're doing. If you get better at what you're doing, then paths will open up to you. So, you get a lot of people who are like, I don't know what to do. I don't know what I want. So I don't know where I'm going. It's like, okay, well, what are you doing now? Well, I've got a job, doing this. Okay, well, let's just do really well at that. And you might hate it, but why don't you switch your mind on to how can I be really good at whatever that is, and then see where it takes you. And it always takes you somewhere, always. So I think that's why I say, and if you can, instead of focusing on the money, right, or what, the incentive systems, which I just think, well, that's pretty much bullshit in the sense that just concentrate on being really good at it, and the success will come. And this of like one of the books I'm writing into is Atomic Habits.
Yeah.
Like anybody, like, where was that book 30 years ago? Like, I've always been a goal setter, but the whole thing of like set up the habits to actually achieve the goal. And that's part of that journey to excellence. So, what's the job asking you to achieve? How do you step that up? What behaviors you need to put in place and habits to actually achieve that? And then concentrate on doing it. And what happens is you become very interested in your work.
Yep.
So, it seemed boring, but actually it's turned out to be really interesting because you've engaged your mind in that. And I think people who can do that are the people who succeed at whatever the industry is or whatever you're doing. And it's far more, you're far more satisfying, or you're going home going, you know what, I did a good job, I helped somebody, or I did this, or I did it. And that's where the joy comes from. He's like, you know what, I served a purpose. Like I have this thing, I think human beings, like from a leadership point of view, all they want is purpose. We're all here for a short time. Some of us shorter than others.
Yes.
But you just want to feel that whatever you're putting your efforts in anywhere, that somewhere along the line, you're making some sort of difference. And it's the job of the leaders to create that. So it doesn't matter what the job is that somebody's doing in your business. If you can create the energy around that to give them purpose so that they want to be excellent, right? So you've got to want to do that type of stuff. The outcome of that is you will feel joy, because you'll go, I'm proud of myself. I did do a good work. I learned something. And you know what? I can now go to the next stage, or maybe I'm going to get promoted because I've learned how to do this. And that leads to another journey of things that you can learn. And I think if you engage in that and you can be happy with nothing, then it's you're pretty much set.
Oh, look, man, I think like insert team. So if from your notes side of things, and just to give the listeners a bit of an idea into some of the scribbles that I'll put down from this is, I mean, learning how to be happy with nothing is an absolute ripper. So thanks, mum-in-law, for that one. But what I've connected there when we've asked about the joy of being excellent, two things. one, even if you're not that interested in what it is that you're doing, in whatever it is that you're doing right now, gang, it's not what you and saying is not necessarily the end goal is just to be really, really good at this thing that you really don't like doing. It's the process that it takes in order to become excellent, right? It's and it's the mentality shift of going, right, fuck it. I'm just gonna be. I might as well just be really good at this because I'm gonna be here anyway. So I might as well rock and roll and do it to the best of my bones, right?
Yeah.
But then the connecting piece that I think is just mega, which you said just towards the end there, joy comes from serving a purpose. A sense of joy comes from a sense of purpose. I'm marinating on that bastard. I really, really am. Later on, I'll be on over a cup of hot brown. I'll be having to think about that because that bit right there is quite profound. And I think that team, I think if you are struggling for whatever reason to find a sense of joy, then maybe that is the indicator that you've kind of lost the sense of purpose or you've lost your way in what your true purpose is. And maybe that's your barometer for it, right? Is how much joy am I feeling? If I'm not feeling that much joy, well, geez, am I even on the right purpose path here?
Potentially. Yeah. And and also it's that whole taking responsibility. By doing that, you're also taking responsibility for where you're at right now.
Yeah.
So you know what? That may not be where you end up. It may not be what you really want. But if you go hard at whatever it is that you're doing, whatever that role is, I promise you, it will evolve to where you want it to be somewhere because you'll learn something about what it is that you want and what you're good at. So
exactly.
you don't, and you don't learn that stuff unless you're under pressure. Right. So that's why I said anybody who's like, oh my God, I'm in a dead end job or I just don't know where to go. And you know what? There might be reasons, there are external reasons like bad bosses and cultures and stuff like that. But before you conclude all of that, just settle yourself down and concentrate on you and concentrate doing the job they've asked you to do. Just do it as well as you possibly can. And if the people you're working with turn out to be assholes, well, it doesn't matter because somebody else out there who needs that role will pick you up and move you on, and that's how you'll go on your journey. So I always think that's the best way. A lot of people don't know what they want. So if you don't know what, and you know what, we don't all know that. Sometimes we think we want this, but until we're halfway down the track, we work out actually we don't. We want something else.
100%.
But by having a crack at it and trying to be the best you can, it gives you all the options to be able to move towards the thing that you could be successful at. And again, what have you got to lose? Nothing. And if you decide to leave that job, right, for a whole bunch of reasons, at least you're leaving that job with some skills.
Exactly right. Exactly right. It's not like, unless it's knowledge about some bloody soccer player's statistics from 1973 or something like that, it's going to be a value of some description, right? And even if it is just the process that you took to get better that you can then apply to whatever else it is that you want to get better at, right? Even if it's just that, then you're onto a winner. Now look, you and I could sit and listen and chat to you for donkeys. I've got like 5 or 6 bullet points here that I'd love to dig into, but I'm very, very conscious of your time. So, you mentioned in wrapping this up, I always have this one last question, and it's really quite poignant when I consider what you said earlier, that you are in a bit of a phase right now where you're feeling like you're not doing enough, or you can do more. Sorry. Now, the final question we always ask all our guests is, in the pursuit of the next version of success for you, what is it that you feel is one thing that you need to bring into your game or that is missing from your game as you head towards that next thing? And I think, obviously, this is possibly something that you've been marinating on yourself already if you're in this sort of phase. So what would you say, if there's one thing that you feel you need to add to your toolkit or your arsenal, what do you think it would be as you head towards whatever this more thing is?
Confidence.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, I need to explain that.
Yes.
As in, confidence to believe in the next phase.
Right.
So our business really, it needs to, we need to get bigger. Like a lot of real estate businesses are getting bigger. And, we're in a danger of, ending up in no man's land. Right. So we've got to keep smashing it forth, right? Going forward. So, sometimes to do big things requires a leap of faith. And the problem with being 30 years old and having been, out on the battlefield for that length of time is that you're being stabbed in the head quite a few times. And this is the beauty of being young, is you have no idea, right? So you get out and do stuff. It's like I started the business. Like if I knew then what I know now, I would never have started it. Right? So that's the beauty of naive youthfulness, is you get out and you have a crack. The problem is that can also be limiting because everything that could go wrong. You've managed cash flows and the challenges, everything, there's no magic formula to do it. But we have to have the confidence to push it forward. So like tonight, I am on Better Homes and Gardens, right?
Oh, wow. Cool.
Yeah, they're doing a segment and I managed to get myself on that with Joanna Griggs, and I'm on it, right?
Awesome.
And part of that was like, you think sometimes, oh God, am I going to go that far out there? And then I came back to, I decided to be a real estate principal, and then I would do whatever I needed to do to be a success. So I thought, right, I'm going on the show.
Yeah. No.
Either at 7:00 tonight, I'm making a fool of myself in front of a national audience. And that's the risk, you know what I mean? It's just sometimes you just got to do it, and you just got to do it. And I think for us, we are an older firm, and like a lot of us have worked together for 20 years, 15 years, and there's a great strength in that because there's a high degree of trust. But we also know what could go wrong, and sometimes it's better not to know. So I think as a business, and for me as a leader, I've got to have the confidence to lead to that. Yeah. And if I can't do that, then I shouldn't be leading the show. Yeah. Our next sort of phase. So even though I'm not an unconfident person, but there's a few scary things in front of us in terms of taking the leap forward and things that we need to change and learn and do new things and a whole range of stuff. So I need to add that to not be. It's like one of those things, like just not be scared and get out there and have a go.
Just before I let you go, because the word faith has been popping up in a whole bunch of conversations, ironically, recently. What is it that gives you faith?
Humans. Which is an odd thing to say, considering I've been, I don't sometimes I call it fucking management, like it's, it's hard, right? But I do think you have to I have an essential belief. I'm an optimistic person by nature. And despite 30 years of doing this, I still have that optimism and that belief in human nature. I just think I've probably got better skills at managing human nature because, human nature is a great thing and a bad thing. So navigating through that is complicated. But I think that while I can continue to add to other human lives, and that's what modern real estate is able to do. It's a framework to do that while I can continue to work and hopefully make a difference, right, to people. That gives me the faith to keep going.
Love it. Love it. Ewan, thank you so much for your time and your candor.
It's a pleasure.
Honestly,
it's been fun.
Absolute joy. Team, you gotta, he's actually recently become a little bit more outwardly with his presence, especially on social media and whatnot. You can start to see him a lot recently, which I, for one, am grateful for. So make sure that you keep an eye out for him, because you'll notice even when he does market updates, you just know that the sense and the tone and the energy behind whatever it is that he's updating us on, it comes from a guy that he's comfortable in his own skin, but he's not afraid to say how it is, which is something that is sorely missed in this world. And the people that do that, a lot of the time, tend to do it with a ridiculous lack of sensibility in terms of what their intent is behind saying the truth, which I think it does cause so much more destruction than it does positivity. But when you look at people like you, and he acts as a bit of a beacon and a bit of an example as to how you can deal in the reality whilst at the same time do it in a with a level of compassion that can be accepted in an appropriate way. Which I just think is mint. So, Ewan Morton, thank you so much for joining us on the Success Curious podcast, sir. Very much appreciated.
Pleasure. Absolute pleasure. Anytime.
All right, and team, stay safe, healthy, happy. There is a stack of notes in my book. There should be a stack of notes in yours. Make sure you reread it. If you have any questions or any queries, DM us. You're more than welcome to. Till next time, look after yourselves. We'll speak to you in the next one.